Welcome to SBC This Week, a weekly news roundup of the Southern Baptist Convention, as well as interviews with top church leaders. I'm your host today, Laura Erlanson. I am joined by someone most listeners will recognize, the OG SBC This Week host, Jonathan Howe. Hi, Jonathan.
Back.
You're back.
Yep.
Just for today. Brandon is out this week.
Brandon's out. He's in South Dakota visiting family, and I'm filling in. So big shoes
it's good
to
to
fill.
have you.
Brandon's like a size 12 or 13.
It's true. Pretty big. Well, it's good to have you. Good to have you back on the podcast. And we're going to talk a little bit later on about a survey that you did recently, right?
So about a week and a half ago, we sent out a survey about the annual meeting and had some thoughts and trying to get some information from folks that are coming. And that have been, and got some fascinating results to share with you at the end. We'll go through those. Some things I think are not surprising. Some maybe a little bit surprising. So
I was very interested to see the statistics from that survey.
So I shared some of those with you this morning, and you saw those, I think, for the first time, the results. So
it's true, yeah.
Not going to go over everything because that would just be boring, but there are a few things we wanted to pull out and talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's good as the guy who's kind of quote unquote in charge of putting on the annual meeting. It's good for me to be in tune with what folks think, and then also realize maybe where there's some information gaps and places we need to educate people, let them know what's going on and why we're doing some things. So we'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Some results that you were expected, and then some that I was like, oh, wouldn't have thought that. So
this has been a big week, SBC. We got 2 of these big weeks a year. This has been the week of prayer for North American missions, kicking off the Annie Armstrong Easter offering season.
Yes. And we've been running stories every day in BP this week. NAM always sends us some fantastic content for their week of prayer. And this year was no different. Beautiful stories, beautiful photos, just some really great features about what church planners are doing all around North America. So I'm just going to list them real quick. We had 6 stories. We're running the last one today as we speak on March 7th. We're going to run that this afternoon, or a little bit later today. A military town in North Carolina, a Mormon stronghold in Utah, a border town in Texas, a remote tiny town in Wyoming, a poverty-stricken neighborhood in Michigan, and a diverse city in Canada. So features from all of those places in this week's Week of Prayer emphasis. And I would just encourage anybody to go read these pieces and pray for these missionaries. It's really impressive and exciting what they're doing.
Yeah. I think you described every town in Wyoming, by the way.
Yeah, remote tiny town. Yeah, get in line. Yeah, right.
I kid. And also Utah. You described every town in Utah.
A Mormon stronghold
in Utah. Yeah, there we go.
True that.
But it is exciting to hear the stories and read the stories of the lives that are being changed through church planning and our North American missions, either chaplaincy or church planners and the missionaries we have all across North America. And, it's always fun to highlight them this week as we kick off that Annie Armstrong Easter offering season. Got a long Easter offering season this year.
It is. Easter is late.
I'm expecting a big offering.
That's right.
Got a lot of promo time,
Yeah.
Easter's late.
It is late.
The 20th of April. So,
well, we have a brand new sponsor on the podcast.
Got a sponsor this week on the podcast, and happy to have the Israel Ministry of Tourism on board with us. They are excited to present Touching Time. It's a whole new program by the Israel Nature and Park Authority. Touching Time is a hands-on activity ideal for families, groups, and anyone interested in archaeological conservation at some of Israel's most significant historical sites. Touching Time is a 2 to 3 hour experience suitable for families and groups, led in English, so you understand what's going on over there. You'll discover what conservation work looks like and involves by participating in actual conservation of the ancient Wall of the Generations and take a guided tour of the site. You can explore the mixed heritage of Zippori, the ancient capital of the Galilee, known for its stunning mosaics, and the fascinatingly layered history of Beit Shean throughout this unique experience. If you're interested in traveling to Israel, you can visit holyland.israel.travel and begin your spiritual journey today. That's holyland.israel.travel to begin your spiritual journey to Israel today. And they got a lot of information over there on the website. There's a whole section actually for pastors that walks you through their whole program and how to take your church or a group from your church and things like that. So really cool. Laura, you've been to Israel, I think,
have
right?
not.
You've not? Okay. You've been in the Middle East, but not Israel.
But I would be willing to, just as an
I volunteer
SBC this
tribute.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Press junket or something. I'd be happy to to volunteer for that. So just, putting that in
Second
there.
week of June is wide open for you. You take off.
Perfect.
Yes, that's awesome.
Okay,
So thanks again to our friends at the Israel Ministry of Tourism. They're on board for a couple of months, and glad to have them on as a sponsor. But to the news, Laura, we go.
Yeah.
We start. We got some state exec news starting in Arizona.
Lots of news this week. Lots of SBC news this week. Stuff happens, It's crazy. It's feast or famine, I feel like. So yeah, Arizona, David Johnson. We had a couple of state exec announcements last week. We had a new exec starting, and then one announcing his retirement. And then again this week we have some transitions in state exec. So yeah, starting with
dropping like flies, Laura. No.
Well, they're coming and dropping.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Arizona's David Johnson has announced that he is planning to retire. He has been executive director of the Arizona Mission Network of Southern Baptists since 2013. And he announced this week at their annual meeting in Phoenix, or his executive board meeting, that he is planning to retire. But he is going to stay on until a successor is named. So no date yet on that retirement. But he said, I want to express my gratitude to Arizona Southern Baptists for the trust they have placed in me 12 years ago, for their support and prayers during these years. It has truly been a privilege to serve our churches and the people across our state. And just some pretty glowing comments about him. I've heard just great things about him over the years, but specifically a pastor of a church out there, Calvary Baptist, Pastor Chad Garrison, said that David Johnson's been a blessing for Arizona Southern Baptist. He has led with integrity, compassion, vision, excellence, and we are better because of his leadership. Another pastor who's the current president of the convention, Mark Mucklow, said there is no way that I or anyone else could possibly calculate what Dr. David Johnson's contribution to Arizona Southern Baptist has been for the past 35 years. Because before he was state exec, he was a pastor out there for a long, long time.
Yeah, he's been deeply involved in the ministry in Arizona. And actually, I was emailed with him this week about an issue out. A church had contacted us, and he jumped right on it, took care of things. And it's like,
yeah, that's awesome. I got to talk to him a little bit back at our EC meeting, not this past one, but in September he was here. And he and I talked for a good while, and I don't think I'd ever talked to him before. It was really neat to just to talk to him, get to know him a little bit. So yeah, congratulations to him, and we'll be praying for Arizona Baptists as they select a new leader out there.
Yeah, they'll form a search team and get somebody in there in the next few months.
Yeah.
So, all right, up to the Great White North, where Randy Covington announced that he has resigned, resigning the end of March, following a February 19th statement that he gave in response to the church where he is a member whenever they were deemed not in friendly cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention. The resignation was submitted on February 20th. They don't have an interim yet up in Alaska, but Randy will be leaving that post at the end of the month, which is a few months earlier than his expected departure. He had already announced his retirement effective of September of this year. But taking us back to the reason for the resignation, some comments that he made after Rabbit Creek Church, where he's a member, was removed from the convention, deemed not in friendly cooperation, said he wanted to take this opportunity to sincerely apologize for a statement he made to Baptist Press. Quote, I deeply regret the impact it may have had on our community. I sincerely regret the statement, quote, in the quote, they do not have egalitarian views, referring to his church. Which is a personal opinion and should not have been made on behalf of the Alaska Baptist Resource Network. I allowed my frustration and emotional bias toward my church, Rabbit Creek Church, to cloud my better judgment. It's important to clarify that I do not support the Baptist Women in Ministry platform or its visions, values, materials, or events. I'm sure that I can also speak for the ABRN in this regard. Please know my love for Alaska Baptist churches and their pastors is genuine and deep. So, so yeah, Randy Covington, he'd already announced his retirement.
Yeah, just a little bit earlier
than expected.
Anticipated, yeah.
So we'll be praying for our friends up in Alaska too, because they were in the process of forming a committee to, bring in a new exec, and now, that timeline gets shifted on them. So
yeah, and I would assume they would probably have an interim. By the end of the month, they probably would have named an interim by then, just somebody to fill the gap. Yeah. So yeah, we'll be paying attention to that and having stories in BP.
I do not volunteer as tribute for that. I've done my one interim duty, and
I mean, as long as it was from June to September, but anything other than that in Alaska, I'm out. I think.
I'm out. So, but so be praying for our friends up there in Alaska as they go through that leadership transition. So, Laura, we got some news from the Department of Justice investigation into the SBC Southwestern. Remember, Matt Queen had pled guilty to that. We got a sentencing this week.
We did, and this is a story we've been following now for over a year, updates periodically about this. And this is a result of the Department of Justice investigation into some SBC entities regarding sexual abuse. And the charge was for falsifying documents and basically lying to federal investigators. And he pled guilty to that charge. But then we also had a story a couple weeks ago about the plea for leniency in the sentencing, because just for various reasons, he had really nothing to do with any sexual abuse. And he had said in his plea for leniency just the mental state that he was in at the time, and he confessed to doing it before anyone even knew, and so it just had a lot of reasons why he felt that the sentence should not involve prison time, and why his attorney argued for that. And so sure enough, that is indeed what happened. So he gets 6 months of basically house arrest, home confinement, and then 6 months beyond that of probation.
Okay,
And
so
then
those are overlapping. I didn't understand that in the original.
Yeah, that's what
thing that
I
I
was
read
actually
from-
asking that somebody else
Yeah,
that the
okay.
other day. Yeah.
I was
But yeah,
wondering
you're
about
right.
that. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
And then $2,000 fine. And so I would assume
And
that
court mandated mental health
yes.
care.
And so, and you could imagine if you're being investigated
Yeah.
for something like this, that you would have some pretty strong mental, emotional
I
reactions
mean,
to
I have that regardless, and I'm not being investigated. So
Well, same. So yeah, a court mandated mental health evaluation and treatment, and his attorney said Dr. Queen is thankful that he will not serve time in prison and will seek to use his time under home confinement to help others. And so this, I would hope, closes what I'm sure has been a very painful chapter for him. He has to get through the next little while of sentencing and paying for it, but then it'll be over. And so that was a good development there this week. And then Southwestern released a statement about the sentencing, Southwestern Seminary. Since November 2022, Southwestern has fully cooperated with the Department of Justice investigation into the Southern Baptist Convention's response to sexual abuse. With the criminal justice process now complete regarding the charges against Matt Queen, we are hopeful that the investigation will soon reach its conclusion, allowing all parties to move forward. Our prayers for Matt Queen and his family, as well as all others involved in this process, continue. Southwestern remains steadfast in its commitment to ensuring the safety and well-being of all members of our community, taking every possible measure to prevent sexual abuse and harassment.
yeah. All right. Well, I'm with them. I hope this does wrap up that chapter over at Southwestern and also across the SBC. So
yeah, in the SBC at large, for sure. Yep.
All right. Well, staying in Texas, Guidestone trustees met this past week and celebrated. They also recognized Pastor Jamie Brock and Concord Baptist Church in Chiefland, Florida, with the second annual John and Teresa Ambra Award. It recognizes and celebrates the top giving normative size church. So those with up to 100 people in attendance each week, the normative Southern Baptist Church, for their financial support of Mission Dignity. And so it's pretty cool to see that. And John Ambra, remember the longtime director of Mission Dignity, and had a stroke a few years ago, and a kind of medical forced into retirement because of that. And it's neat to see that his name and his legacy lives on in this award. So.
And
really
I love
cool.
that this church, small church, under 100 people, but they are a bigger supporter of Mission Dignity, which is sort of the heart of Guidestone. I think I've even heard Hans Stillbeck say that several times, that Mission Dignity is the heart of what Guidestone's all about.
Started as the Annuity and Relief Board.
Yeah, taking care of those servants. I loved this part of the Guidestone story. In fact, as soon as I read it yesterday, when we got the story in hand, I emailed our friend Roy out at Guidestone. I said, hey, you're going to have a further story about this part, right? And he said, yes, actually, we're working on it. So Guidestone Vice President Tim Sturr introduced trustees to something called the Start Well Initiative. And they'll begin a pilot program of it in Tennessee and Kentucky this year. And it will provide eligible ministers with relief for medical and education debt, guided education toward financial, physical, and mental wellness, and one-on-one financial education for pastors.
Man, that's awesome.
So that sounds like an amazing program. And so, yeah, and Roy did assure me that they're working on a fuller story about this program. So be looking for that.
Yeah, I think people forget about all the resources that Guidestone does have for pastors. They do a lot. And you can find out more about that over at guidestone.org/pastor. You can go to that website. Guidestone, I mean, they do a ton for pastors. We got an interview with Hans Stillbeck coming up on the road to Dallas soon. That's going to be coming up in a few weeks. And he talks about all the things that they're doing. It's just, you don't realize how big and how well that they're helping churches and pastors. It get a lot of, pigeonholed, I think, into like just financial or just insurance type stuff, but they do so much more. So
Yeah,
really cool to
that's
see
right. That is really good.
All right. Speaking of financial, CP receipts were below budget in February. Once again, just off of 7% below the same number from last year. Southern Baptist gave just over $18 million through the Cooperative Program in the 5th month of the fiscal year. We're almost halfway there. End of March will be the halfway point in the fiscal year. Year to date, CP receipts are below budget by a little under 3.5%. And, the monthly giving amount was budgeted, like I said, $19 million. The giving amount was just a little bit over $18 million this month. So we continue to keep an eye on that as we get toward June, whenever we pass the budget at the annual meeting. And for next year, I think the budget is going to remain flat, $190 million for next year as well. So that's the plan right now.
Yep, you got to come to Dallas to vote on that budget. Yeah, everybody
so,
get ready to go. Yeah.
Really cool thing happened this week for Southern Baptist first vice president. And he shared with me, I texted him the night after this, and he said that following what we're going to talk about, he actually got a ticket to the State of the Union, got to stick around and go to the State of the Union that night.
Wow.
So tell us what Brad Graves was up to this week, Laura.
Well, our first vice president of the SBC, Brad Graves, who's an Oklahoma pastor, received an invitation from Senator James Lankford, I believe, who is also an Oklahoma Baptist, to pray before the Senate. And so he did earlier this week, March 4th. He offered the opening prayer in the U.S. Senate. And he said, I've been praying, this is part of his prayer, I've been praying for every man and woman in the Senate chamber to come to know the love of God. I pray that every family represented in this room would experience the love of God. And I pray for every American citizen to understand the depths of God's love for them. I'm like, what that's a beautiful thing to pray in that chamber. He's pastor of First Baptist Church of Ada, Oklahoma. And he told Baptist Press in an interview that he said, one day you're just praying in your closet, and the next day you're praying before the most powerful legislative body in the world. I love that. He's praying in his closet. And the timing,
too. Yeah. Like, he had it on the day of the State of the Union, and, just lucked into a ticket for that night and everything, got to go to that. And man,
very cool. Very
kind
cool.
of a neat day,
I would
man.
volunteer to do that, too, by the way.
A pinch me day there for him.
For real. And he got to take his 15-year-old son with him too, which I just thought, that's something that kid's going to remember the rest of his life. What a cool thing. Yeah. I loved what he said too. He said, I don't want to sound arrogant, but the only thing that qualifies me to pray is that I pray. I'm like, hey, that's how it is. There's nobody. I've heard Joe McKeever, a longtime Baptist Press cartoonist, he says this a lot. He said, anytime I see somebody who claims to be an expert on prayer, I just scoff. I said, the only thing that makes you an expert on prayer is just to pray.
Yes.
So I feel like Brad Graves
is kind
experts. Of echoing that. That's right.
Maybe. Yeah. So that wasn't the only thing coming out of D.C. this week. Had a executive order on IVF passed by President Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good analysis piece from David Roach talking about just the lack of regulation in IVF. And I think Southern Baptists, maybe even ones that weren't all that read up on IVF. Last summer, we kind of all got educated a little bit with the resolution that was passed, and then the discussion surrounding that, both before and after the adoption of that resolution about IVF. And Brent Leatherwood, ERLC president, said that instead of rushing to expand or subsidize these technologies, our leaders need to ask better questions about this entire field of medicine. Does this truly build a culture of life, or does it undermine it? Are we plotting down a path toward designer babies and disposable lives? Some estimates show there are more than 1 million preborn lives frozen in clinics across the country. Is there a pathway for these children to live? Are there ways to bring all of this into alignment with God's design for procreation and for family? And so the Trump order that you talked about, the executive order, basically is just to enhance protections for access to IVF and to ease the unnecessary statutory burdens to make IVF treatment more affordable. And so it's popular. Most people are very supportive of IVF, but I think maybe people just haven't thought about the implications of what all it means to have these hundreds of thousands or perhaps even over 1 million frozen embryos just in a state of limbo. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years. We also talked to Andrew Walker in this story, who's of course at Southern professor there, theology, but also is this year's resolutions committee
Yep.
chairman. And so I don't have any idea if the resolutions committee is thinking about submitting another resolution about IVF, but Andrew Walker told us about this story that we should be hoping for policies that regulate the IVF industry. What people don't understand, that IVF is kind of the wild, wild west of artificial reproductive technology, and there are very few controls and regulatory policies surrounding it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll see
right.
what happens with that.
Yep. So speaking of the annual meeting and things that happened last year,
Yes.
the law amendment, what was known as the law amendment, it was actually the Sanchez amendment to the law, motion that he made.
That's right.
Was, did not pass last year. They needed 2/3, but there's going to be an effort to resurrect that this year. There was an open letter posted this week, Juan Sanchez involved in that again, about the desire to bring that back again for a review this next year at the annual meeting in Dallas. So that is probably on the table. Obviously it has to be made. You can't just, say that and it happened. So we'll have to keep an eye out on things in the proceedings in Dallas to see if that amendment is made or, potential amendment to the Constitution and what happens after that. It would, right now there's standing rules in place that refer everything regarding governing documents to the executive committee. And that would have to be,
right.
suspended.
It's like a procedural.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that have to happen.
They would need to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So they get to 2/3 this year, get a 2/3 again next year, that kind of thing. So, we'll just kind of wait and see on that. Obviously, I think a lot of this, unsurprisingly, coming in the wake of the news last week about New Spring Church in Anderson, South Carolina, and the woman that they have on staff as a teaching pastor. And so this is kind of an outflow of that. And, we'll wait till June to see what exactly happens, what exactly the wording of that motion is.
Yeah. Once again, make your plans to be in the room.
Decisions are made by those who show up.
Yeah. And speaking of those who show up.
And speaking of showing up, there we go. Well done, Laura.
Let's talk about the survey.
Yes.
Yeah. What do people that come to this thing really want?
Yeah. So we sent out the survey to our big list. We have a big list, email list here at the executive committee, and Southern Baptist churches from all over represented in that. It's a huge list. And with 3,000 submissions on the survey. So more than enough to be statistically valid, right?
That's awesome.
55% of participants were pastors. Another 23.5% were in denominational work. So basically 4 out of 5 of the people that are coming to the annual meeting are, quote unquote, I think we would call working in ministry. So in some capacity, they're on church staff, they're working at a seminary, working at an AMS, something like that. They're in ministry. About 20% are not. That tracks with everything that we have on our post-event surveys that we do. So the question was, what is the thing that motivates you to come to the annual meeting? Like, what motivates people? I mean, it's an obvious investment, an obvious time that, out of your year, out of your life. So what motivates you? And the top response, it was basically pick as many as you want, or up to 3, I think it was, but to participate in convention business, what we just talked about, the amendments to the Constitution, the motions, the resolutions, the things that we discussed a lot, officers, voting for officers. And I think that's a good reason to come to the annual meeting, because that is what the annual meeting is for, right?
Yeah, it's not called the annual conference. It's called the annual meeting. It's a meeting. It's a business meeting.
It's a business meeting. It's the world's largest deliberative body.
Yeah.
And, the business is done in the room, and it's done for 2 days straight. And, people come, they plop down and they sit there and they vote and, pay attention. And I like that. I like the fact that we have more Southern Baptists now involved in the annual meeting than we've had in the last 15 years.
Me too. Yeah.
So, they come to do that. They come to also 61% said that they came to hear from SBC leaders and speakers, and another 60% said they came to connect with other pastors and church leaders. I think that all tracks with what if I asked you the 3 things, that's what you would probably answer, because we know that people, it's seen as family reunion. It's, people come to do business, and they come to see the preaching and hear the preaching and whatever it may be, and see speakers and go to events and things like that. So obviously, I think those were expected results from our survey, right?
For sure.
All right. Next question was, the next thing we're going to talk about, what part of the meeting excites you the most? Now, this one is the one that I was a little surprised about.
Yeah,
and there was maybe some recency bias in this one, because this was taken like the day or day after that there was a lot of hubbub about what we just talked about, the New Spring news that came out last week. So I think there's a little bit of recency bias in this, but at the same time, they were asked to choose one thing. What's the thing that excites you the most about the annual meeting? The business sessions and voting, which I'm like, what's wrong with you? If that's the thing. I mean, I like it, but like, I don't know if it excites me the most, right?
It kind of tracks with the first question, though.
It does,
if that's the reason you come. But is it exciting? Yeah, maybe not so much.
Yeah, it can be.
It can be.
But
yeah, I like it. I think it's cool.
But I don't know if exciting is the word I would use. Right. Networking and fellowship opportunities. Honestly, that's what I expected to be the top one. And it was a very close second. And then you got worship and preaching sessions. And then surprisingly, I think, and we'll talk about this a little more at the end, the pastors conference, only 14% of the people say that that's the thing that they are excited about the most at the annual meeting. So the pastors conference, which has long been a standing tradition. And, we've seen and heard from heroes of the faith and at the pastors conferences over the years, but less than 1 in 6 say that's, or, really 1 in 7 say that that's what they're excited about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting.
A little surprising there, I think.
Yeah.
But, all right, let's see. On to the next question here. 75% of the folks say that they would follow the convention online if they couldn't make it still. I don't think that it was surprising at all.
I think that's
people are really engaged. I know that because I've seen the live stream numbers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. People love watching it. I mean, I know people at my church that watch it that aren't able to make it or whatever. There's lots of people watching for sure.
So they follow it a lot of different ways, and we even see this with Baptist Press. I mean, it's your Super Bowl week basically. Mm-hmm. You post around 80 stories that week.
Yep.
There's a lot going on, and our traffic shows that, right? There's always a huge spike in traffic at Baptist Press, so I think it's pretty obvious that if people aren't there, they're still following along online. Absolutely,
yeah, that's very true.
Some more info on the pastors conference. The priority. It was asked, what's the priority of the pastors conference to you? 38% find it important. 37% didn't. So it was basically split.
Yeah, kind of.
And then there's 25% that are indifferent. They're like, take it or leave it. Which again, I thought that was interesting. That only less than 4 in 10 folks really find the pastors conference as an important part of their week.
Mm-hmm. Well, some people don't even get there. Yeah.
And that's Monday. Part of the thing too. They come in on Monday night because they're coming for Tuesday and Wednesday. And I think it does track with attendance. Last year we had 14,000 messengers and guests in Indianapolis. The average attendance at the pastors conference, because we actually scanned people last year when they came in the door, 3,400 people. So about a quarter of the folks that were there actually made it into the pastors conference on average. So
yeah, that's interesting. I do think a lot of that is people just not being there yet.
Yeah, I think there is
maybe them not making it a priority, like
you're saying. I mean, that tracks, right?
Yeah.
If you're not getting there before it starts on Sunday night at 30, then is it really a priority? So it's a fascinating result there. All right, what would make the SBC annual meeting more valuable to you or for you? And one of the things was the top answer, and they were all kind of really bunched together. The 3 things that people really want that would make it more
the same percentage,
valuable. Is more opportunities for discussion engagement, changes in the business session structure, and more training and breakout sessions. So what I found interesting is the training and breakout sessions.
Yeah,
because
me too.
There aren't many of those. And, a quarter of the people are basically saying, hey, we would actually like that. We would like to have more training and breakout sessions.
Yeah, that isn't. So it is more like a conference and not just a meeting. But
so maybe wanting some, we had the Sin conference back in 2021. Whenever we were in Nashville, there may be some still, some recency bias in that, wanting some more of that. Who knows? So that's just an interesting thing. So this is the part that I was really, there were bits and pieces of this whole survey that I was really interested in, but these pieces at the end were the things that I was really wondering about, and if they would line up with my preconceived notions, and they did.
Yes, they did. Yeah,
do financial considerations impact your ability to attend the SBC annual meeting? Yes. About half the people say yes. Financial considerations are a factor in whether or not I go or don't.
Yeah, I'm actually honestly surprised that it was only half.
Well, I mean, that's a fair point. It is significant, I think, for everybody. A lot of churches do put it in their budget, so maybe it's the reason that it's not
That's true, because
factor,
you just know that your church it's in the budget.
Because the church is taking care of it. But if you're having to debate on, hey, we need a new baptistry, or the baptistry being fixed, or I can go to the annual meeting,
Yeah.
That's a tough pill to swallow there.
Right. Or the kids can go to youth camp, or the pastor can go to the annual meeting, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Something like that. And I know a lot of churches are in that predicament.
Mhm.
They have that that debate and that discussion every year. So it's something that they have to deal with. And so more along those lines, what are the costs or the biggest barriers? And this is the one I think a little bit surprised me. The hotel and lodging costs are a bigger barrier than the travel expenses. So
Yeah.
once you're there is a bigger barrier than getting there.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting too. I think a lot of people drive. And so
Yeah,
driving
yeah,
cost
and
is
that's
sort of
possible.
negligible.
Yeah,
Whereas once you get there, you got to stay in a hotel, and that's very
yeah,
expensive.
yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I got some other thoughts, some extrapolations, if you will, from this when we get to the end of the survey here. Those I think I expected it to be flip flop, but that was me.
Mm-hmm.
But the next question: what are the most important factors a city should offer when hosting the annual meeting? And obviously, I think based on the previous answer, this should be no surprise. Affordable hotel and lodging options
Mm-hmm.
is number one, and then easy travel accessibility number two, and the safety and walkability of the area. So no surprise that in a group of people who are mostly concerned about hotel and lodging costs being the barrier for them, that is the thing that they want most from a city.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then speaking of the cities, which cities? So I asked people, if you had to pick 3 cities, where would you go? What 3 cities would you want? A little surprised by this. I did not expect Nashville to be number one.
Yeah,
honestly.
I'm really surprised.
And number one by
number
far,
one by
like
a huge
not
margin.
even close.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that too. I mean, Nashville's awesome.
62% said Nashville.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
I like
Orlando.
it. It's a good town. It's where we live. So, and then Orlando and Dallas. I think there's some recency bias in this one a little bit because some of the cities we haven't been to are way farther down, cities we're headed to in the future.
Yeah.
I will tell you right now that when you go to Dallas this summer and then you go to San Antonio in 2029, you are never going to want to go to Dallas again after going to San Antonio.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh,
just
yeah.
the better convention center and all that.
Oh, it's just the setup is fantastic. It's so good. And I think part of it is that people just haven't been to these cities and experienced the conference in these cities in recent years. And that's why they're so far down the list. I mean, we look at the list and, San Antonio's sitting there middle to the end. I think 97 was the last time we were there.
No, because we did one.
2007. I'm sorry.
I was going to, that sounds more like it. Yeah.
2007 or 2005, somewhere in that range, mid 2000s, I think it was.
My favorite convention center is Phoenix. Phoenix way
and
down
it's
here on the list.
Third from the bottom.
Yeah, it's way down here.
Found out, and I did not expect this, Laura. People hate Houston.
Yeah.
And not just the Astros. They just hate the city.
I'm not a fan either. I'm not a fan.
I used to live there. I'm not a fan either. So I'm kind of
navigating the city is very hard.
Yeah, but whenever you get there, you're downtown. You're there.
Well, yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Last time we were in Houston was 2013. So it's been a while since we've been there. Again, I think there's some recency bias. Indianapolis, very good city, great city, very good conference city. I expected that to be at the top.
All the hotels being right there, so convenient.
Yeah, Orlando, I expected to be at the top because it's Orlando, and who doesn't like going to Orlando? People that hate fun, maybe.
Yeah, rainbows and puppies. Yeah, people that hate that stuff.
So, what was really surprising, kind of foreboding, I think, that Salt Lake City was the bottom. And I think part of it is just people haven't been to Salt Lake City.
That's true. You're right. I think there's a little bit of bias for places we've already been.
Yeah, just don't go to. Like, you have to have a reason. Salt Lake City's not one of those things where you're just like, hey, let's just pop over. It takes a flight for most of our people to get there, like 95%.
Pretty long flight, too.
There's really not a whole lot of interest for us to go there for. Like,
right. But it's beautiful. People that haven't been, that have never seen it, it's beautiful.
I love it. I went to the Utah State Convention. I've been there 3 or 4 times the past few years. And this past year was in Salt Lake. And I went over to Park City one night after they were done. We're done, in the afternoon, the pastor's conference. Herschel York was preaching. Hung out with him for a little bit, listened to him preach. And then that night, had free. So I went over to Park City. Absolutely gorgeous. It is one of my favorite places to be. And it was empty because it's the fall and snow season really hadn't started yet. It's whatever. And oh man, it was just such a great town. It's
just stunning. So it's worth it. It's worth it to go to these places just to see the country.
Come in 27.
Yeah,
because it's going to be really cool. And the weather out there. The last time I was in Salt Lake before this was in May. May, Laura. It had snowed the night before.
My, that's a
The
little much for
weather,
me.
it was 40 degrees. It was 40 degrees in May.
Yeah.
And I was like, this
You're
is
not really selling
awesome.
it now.
Huh?
You're not
Well,
selling
but
it for me.
the thing about June, it'll be like 60.
Yeah, June will be perfect.
It'll be
That's
gorgeous.
True. Better than Houston, for sure.
Yes, better than Houston and
Which is
Phoenix.
Like 100 degrees and 100% humidity.
You're over here asking for Phoenix and all the things.
I don't mind the heat in Phoenix. I really don't. If it's
That's
not
because you
humid, I
sit
don't
inside
care.
all day.
I don't care. No.
But yeah, it was a fascinating little thing here. And Kansas City made it. Kansas City's somewhere we haven't gone in a really, really long time.
Yeah.
And a city that is not really on the docket right now. Right now, he says. But I will actually be there in about 3 or 4 weeks, giving it a look-see for a potential for the future. We shall see about Kansas City.
Okay.
It's
a good barbecue.
Just barely big enough, maybe, for us.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem. And that's what I wanted to talk about here at the
Our
end here.
Our choices are limited.
Is that, what does this tell us? What do these things tell us? All right, so let's a couple things. We'll get back to the cities in just a minute. But first of all, the pastors' conference not being a priority is a little bit of a concern to me. Like, what does that mean for the future of the pastors' conference? Because the people putting on the pastors' conference do a ton of work and put in a great effort. And Heather Jansen, who's been kind of the logistics person behind that the past few years, fantastic to work with, does a great job putting on a great conference. It's just not being attended, though. So what does that tell us? I don't know. But I do know one thing, too. The realities of the economics of the pastors' conference are difficult. I've seen that up close and personal. We've had discussions. We had discussions about that at the executive committee meeting a couple weeks ago about the economics surrounding the pastors' conference because
there's no budget.
Well, they have to raise everything. Yes, and the EC subsidizes a bunch of it. They give the executive committee or the SBC, whatever, they pay $100,000 for the space, but they still have to raise that and all the money that it takes to put on the conference. There was an effort a couple of years ago to put together an endowment for that, but that didn't really get off the ground too much. And what does it mean for the future of the pastor conference? I don't know the answer to that, but I thought it was fascinating, nonetheless, the results of that. But again, whenever the problem is, the more the convention grows, and the convention has grown substantially from the mid-2000 teens, whenever we were running, 5,000-6,000 people in Baltimore and Columbus and things like that, the cost for a big room to get production in a big room is a lot more than a cost for production in a very small room. Yeah. I mean, that just makes sense. So you got to have more screens, more sound, everything. It just takes a lot more.
More
and
personnel,
the cost goes up. And it's not really proportionate either. It's kind of like a hockey stick. It's like once you hit a point, it jumps because you go from not needing this to needing all of this, and it really does jump. So that's something just to think through. And another thing, there's a desire for breakouts and more learning times. I didn't expect that in the survey, but here we are. And then as far as it goes to the cities, I think me as the guy that's quote unquote, I say in charge of it, putting it on. I'm the one. I'm the guy, the face of the road to whatever thing. I need to educate folks more why we're in the cities we're in. We had a lot of questions. We had a lot of comments about, I wish we went to smaller cities. I wish we were, in small towns instead of big cities so that it would be cheaper. It's like, but where are you going to meet?
Right.
Like if
you don't just need a big room, you need a big room plus thousands of hotel rooms.
Yes,
by.
Plus thousands of hotel rooms, plus a space for the exhibit hall. If you want a full convention experience that you come to expect and know, it takes really large space. 500,000 square feet, 400 to 500,000 square feet at a minimum. That's the reason we had to move from Charlotte a couple years ago when we went to New Orleans. And that's another reason that I'm having trouble finding places for us to go in the future. And why I'm going to Kansas City, because it's really difficult to find space. The problem is it's a catch-22. You have to trade off the convenience and proximity of being near the convention center, because hotels near those convention centers in major downtown metropolitan areas are expensive. So do you want to be close or do you want to save money? Because there's a trade-off there. You can go to the convention in Dallas, stay out by the airport or in Hearst or something like that, Waxahachie, West Texas, by the way. Bring us a kolache if you stay there. Yes. Bring us a kolache if you stay in West Texas.
Please do.
Because Laura and I love some kolaches. But you can stay there. You're going to drive a long ways. Then you can save $100 to $200 a night in hotels. Maybe not $200 a night, because then you'd be paying like $10. And I wouldn't stay in a $10 a night hotel. But you can get a hotel room for $80 to $90. It's not going to be close. So it's just one of those things.
Yeah,
it's a
trade-off. Everything
And
in
I
life
hate
is a
that. I wish
trade-off.
there was
Yeah.
a way that we could have $110 hotel rooms right next to the convention center. It's just not going to happen. But we are doing, I tell you this right now, I'm doing everything I can in my power whenever we're talking to these convention centers to get these, or in the hotels to get these prices down. We're doing everything we can
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
drive down the cost. But I mean, think about it. If you're a hotel, I'm going to sell 400 rooms and I can sell them at $199 a night or $239 a night.
Right. Yeah. What
What am I
incentive
doing?
do they have to lower the price
Yeah.
if the
Why
rooms are going to
am I
fill
giving
up?
you
Yeah.
$40 off? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm going to sell it one way or another. Why am I giving up 400 rooms at $400 or $40 a night? That's like what, $16,000 a night. Why am I giving that up? You know? So it's an economic thing and it's a struggle, but we're doing everything we can. Just know we are doing everything we can to keep these prices down. There's a reason that we're not going to Atlanta. I'll tell you that right now. I'll just be honest here on the show. We went to Atlanta to look at it this past fall. It wasn't a good setup. First of all, the convention center, the setup wasn't going to work well for us and what we do. It just didn't work. But they wanted a hotel. This was for 2030. We were talking to them about 2030. The convention hotel would have been $379 a night.
Holy cow.
And I told him to pound sand. I was like, there's no way we're doing that to our people.
Wow.
I refuse to do that to Southern Baptists.
You know, you make me think. I hadn't thought of this. It's interesting that Atlanta, it didn't even make the list of cities where people want to go.
Because we're not going. Because
That's
I'm not
interesting.
doing that to Southern Baptists. I refuse to do that to Southern Baptists.
Yeah, that's
$379 a night for the Signia right next to the convention center. And I told them there is no way in the world that I am bringing 20,000 people at those kind of hotel prices. I'm not doing that to us.
We're in kind of a unique situation in what we're trying to do here because we're trying to put on as conventions go, ours is very big.
Yes.
But most of those really big conventions are put on by trade organizations or companies,
businesses that have a lot of money.
And we don't. We're bringing in pastors, people in ministry that don't have $379 a night. Don't have $379 for 3 nights of hotel room.
That was pre-tax, by the way. I mean, you're over $400 a night now. And if you drove to Atlanta, another $75 a night probably for parking. I mean, you're looking at a hotel at $500 a night.
Yeah, that's insane. That's insane.
No, we're not doing it.
No.
We're not doing it. I'm not doing that to Southern Baptist. So, that's
Atlanta.
one of those things that won't get out there but everything. But like, look, these are the discussions we have, and these are the decisions we have to make whenever we're talking about this. So, it's hard because hotels in the summer are notoriously high because, Laura, when do people travel the most?
Summertime. Yeah.
Summertime. So, our timing, it's good because we can have more people there because people have, they can get off.
Yeah,
and
kids are out of school.
Kids are out of school and everything like that. It's great. It's also, again, it's like that trade-off. You got to, it's going to cost more to travel because it's summer and travel costs go up in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with gas prices. Why do gas prices always go up after Memorial Day? Because people are traveling all the time.
Well, and in the fall, you have risks of hurricanes.
Yeah.
And in the winter,
well, in school, I mean,
spring,
like in
you
church
have
life
risk of
is
blizzards and snowstorms. It's like,
I mean, there's no other option than June or July.
Summertime is really the best time. For sure.
That's when we get, and the final thing or 2 more things that I gleaned from this. Again, I repeat it. People hate Houston, and I think people also forget how little we go to the West Coast. I had a lot of comments in there about why do we have to go out west all the time, Laura. Since 2020 or since 2003, so 2004 on. Mm-hmm. Guess how many times we have gone out to the West Coast with? And I'm not going to guess
because I saw your results.
You see my result here in the notes.
I'm not going to guess.
22 years, Laura. We've been going. We've gone out to the West Coast 3 times.
3 times.
3 times in 22 years. That's like 13%.
That's not a lot.
No, it's not.
Yeah. And there are actually a lot of Southern Baptists.
People forget these things.
People don't realize that too. There's a lot of Southern Baptists in California and Arizona and New Mexico.
Yeah, we had 1,000-something Southern Baptists from California show up when we were in Anaheim a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. Had a great attendance in Anaheim, 8,133 people. So, it's. I think people forget there's a recency. We just went to Anaheim. Like we go out west all the time. Go to the West 3 times in 22 years.
Yeah. Now we are going there again.
We're going there in 27, so that'll be 4 times in 24 years. Yeah. But, here we are.
yeah, that's really not. It's definitely the small minority of times.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. All right, so that was way too much on a survey, but it's some interesting stuff. So maybe you get a Baptist Press article about that later next week, and you can read more about it. So
yeah, I think that people would like to see these numbers for sure.
Yep. All right, so that'll do it for the news and the discussion about that, and bring us to my favorite part of the week this week in SBC history. Laura, our minds.
Okay, this is Dateline March 10th, 1978. This is the Baptist Press headline: Missionary hopes for easier year.
Amen.
Dateline is Jakarta, Indonesia. Clarence Griffin, Southern Baptist missionary to Indonesia, hopes 1978 will turn out better than 1977. His problems actually started one day late in 1976 when he stopped at a traffic light in Jakarta, Indonesia's capital, and an Indonesian army truck ran into him from behind and crumpled his van. He was not injured, but that accident was a foreshadowing of things to come.
Gosh.
In early 1977, while leading a youth retreat, Griffin accidentally walked through a glass door and had to have 13 stitches. In successive months, actually my mom did that one time, walked through a glass door, yeah. In successive months, he suffered dengue fever, malaria, and typhoid. And finally, while playing catcher on a missionary team, Griffin caught a bad softball squarely in the eye. That 8-stitch eye injury and a broken bone below the eyeball were successfully treated earlier this year. With eyesight repaired and enthusiasm unimpaired, Griffin continued to serve as urban evangelist in Jakarta, a metropolis of 7 million.
Man.
So that's it. That's the whole story.
Talk about missionary resilience right there.
Just read the whole thing. So I had to look up.
Incredible.
I had to look up Clarence Griffin. And the IMB on their website has an obituary for him. He passed away, went to be with the Lord October 11th, 2019.
Wow.
At the age of 87. So that
40
really
years
bad,
later.
40 years later. So that really bad year of 1977 apparently was short-lived. He continued it into the mission. He retired from the mission field in the mid-90s. So he was there a total of 35 years in Indonesia. Clarence Griffin. He was a member of Taylor's First Baptist Church in Taylor, South Carolina. And his obituary said that in lieu of flowers, the family wanted people to give toward the Lottie Moon Christmas offering through Taylor's First Baptist Church.
There you go.
So,
Man.
Clarence Griffin, a hero.
Yeah.
Somewhat accident-prone.
Your Southern Baptist missionaries, folks. That is your Southern Baptist missionary right there.
I just love that. I love that story. I'm like, golly, this guy can't catch a break. And yet he didn't. He was not deterred.
Unfazed.
Yeah.
Unfazed.
I love it. Well, Jonathan, thanks for being with me today.
Yeah.
It would have been no fun to do a podcast by myself.
Yeah.
With Brandon gone. So I appreciate you being here. And you're a pro. You could just do this in your sleep. So you make it easy.
Sometimes.
I appreciate it very much.
Yeah. So again, we want to thank our sponsor, the Israel Ministry of Tourism. Don't forget to check out holyland.israel.travel and begin your spiritual journey to Israel today. That's holyland.israel.travel. Thanks again to the Israel Ministry of Tourism for being on board next couple of months here on SBC This Week.
Yeah. And once again, we had more stories than we had time to talk about today. Don't forget about the Annie Armstrong Easter offering season. And another calendar note, March 16th is Church Planting Emphasis Day on the SBC calendar. So be looking for stories and items about that. And you can find all of that and much more at baptistpress.com. Thanks for listening.